The Zen Environment by Marian Mountain. The Three Treasures. Sometimes when the days are long and hot and my creative spirit begins to droop like a thirsty plant, I walk down the old road to the source of the Marble Peak Spring. At the end of the road, I take a little trail that winds down into a cool canyon. At the base of a huge sycamore tree, the spring flows right out of the ground. Here I satisfy my thirst before I walk downstream. Through the trees I can see a water wheel turning. It's just a rusty iron hay rake wheel with a dozen iron sand scoops welded onto its rim. A wooden flume made of some old boards channels the creek so that the water hits the scoops and turns the wheel. The turning wheel operates the pump, which pushes the water up the mountain through a pipe to a tank above the garden. The water flowing over the wheel into the metal scoops creates a soothing, musical sound. It clears my mind of old attachments. It lifts my spirits. It turns me back to the source of creativity. What other Buddha could more eloquently preach the Dharma? In Buddhism, a wheel is sometimes used to symbolize Buddhist teachings. Buddha's first sermon is said to have turned the wheel of the Dharma. When Buddha realized enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, he was a Dharma wheel at rest. When the Dharma wheel is at rest, it's possible to examine intellectually each spoke of the wheel, or each one of its complex meanings. But a Dharma wheel isn't fully functioning unless it's turning. When Buddha was moved by his inmost request to go to Deer Park near Benares and try to express the enlightenment to the 5 ascetics who had been his spiritual companions for many years, he set the Dharma wheel in motion. It isn't necessary to have a brilliant mind or a spectacular enlightenment to set the Dharma in motion. If we can just get one spoke of our rusty old wheel moving, then all the other spokes will begin to move. When we do what we know we should do with our whole mind and body, not just for ourselves but for everyone, and not just for some gaining idea but for the sake of itself, we set the Dharma wheel in motion. The wind whispers in the pine trees and rattles the dry leaves in the madrones. A hawk circles overhead. Thin clouds drift up from the sea. Walking up the old road, I see fresh deer spoor and tracks of a fox in the dust. When we stop seeking for treasures, at the end of the road we find treasures scattered along every inch of the way. There is a Zen story about the son of a thief who asks his father to initiate him into the secrets of the trade. The old thief takes the young boy to a big house, and while the family is asleep, leads the boy quietly to a room which contains a large clothes closet. And the father tells his son to go into the closet and pick out some clothing. When the boy is inside, the father closes the closet door and locks it. The father then goes outside and knocks loudly on the front door of the house, waking the residents. Before anyone in the house has a chance to see him, the wily old thief slips quietly away from the scene. The young man in the closet has to summon all his ingenuity to escape from his predicament without getting caught. When he finally manages to reach home safely, The boy begins to berate his father for betraying him, but the old thief interrupts his son, asking him how he managed to get out of the trap. And when the son tells the father in details of his escape, the father says, "There you are. You have learned the art." This is an interesting story. The author, Wu Tzu Faiyan, was a master teacher who lived in China during the Sung Dynasty. He said, "If people ask me what Zen is like, I will say that it is like learning the art of burglary." There is an old riddle from another land that could be added as a commentary to this story, and the riddle goes like this. What is the first thing a thief does when he enters a house? Answer: he looks for a way out. We might say that the adept in Zen is someone who has learned how to escape all the traps of life, including the trap of Zen. Kitano Genpo was a Japanese Zen master who understood very well the art of not getting caught in three of life's most dangerous traps: pleasure, power, and success. Kitano Genpo said that when he was a young monk, he was introduced to the relaxation of smoking. But after enjoying a few pipes of tobacco, he realized that smoking might disturb his meditation. So before it became a habit, he threw away the pipe and tobacco and never again indulged in this kind of pleasure. A few years later, Kitano Genpo became interested in the I Ching, the Chinese doctrine of the universe. Kitano Genpo found that with the aid of the I Ching, he was able to tell the future. But after a few successes, he decided that he might become so involved in the fascinating aspect of fortune-telling that he would neglect his meditation. So he gave up the study of the I Ching, and he never again resorted to this kind of power. When Kitano Genpo was 28 years old, he studied calligraphy and Chinese pottery. He became very skilled in these arts, but he realized that if he did not stop, he would become a poet and not a Zen master. So he never wrote another poem. Kitano Genpo became abbot of Aheiji Temple in Japan and died at the age of 92 after a long life of teaching Zen. Tosui, another famous Japanese Zen master, understood the art of not getting caught in the trap of Zen. He said that one day, at the height of his popularity, Tosui disappeared. No one can find him until years later, when one of his disciples discovered him living with some beggars under a bridge in Kyoto. When the disciple asked him to take him again as a student, Tosui said he would consider doing so if the student could accept the Zen master's lifestyle. The Zen master probably guessed that the student considered himself quite advanced in his understanding of Zen, and this was the master's way of testing him out. It took less than 3 days of Totsui's Tangaryo and practices at Tensui's tiny temple. Tangaryo is a period of 3 to 7 days spent by novice monks sitting in the monastery vestibule, waiting to be admitted. Totsui found out that the young man was still caught in the trap of discrimination. So the Zen master told him, "Get out of here and do not bother me again." Now, just because I mentioned 2 Zen masters who appear to be on opposite sides of the fence, I don't want to leave the impression that Kitano Genpo was caught in the Zen trap while Totsui escaped. One Zen master escaped the trap of Zen by totally rejecting honor and success, while the other escaped by wholeheartedly accepting success and honor. Everyone must escape the Zen trap in their own way. It's not until a Zen student is able to get himself out of his own traps by his own ingenuity that he will find out who he really is and what he is doing in his life. A Zen trap that is apt to catch many Zen students in Buddhism is the Buddha's three treasures: the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, Sangha. When a Zen master says, "Kill the Buddha," he is warning students not to get caught in the Buddha trap. When Tatsu was getting old, a beggar gave him a picture of Buddha. Tatsu hung it up in his hut, but he put a reminder to himself underneath. It read, "Mr. Amida Buddha, this little room is quite narrow. I can let you remain as a transient, but don't think I'm asking you to help me to be reborn in your paradise." Tosui knew the danger of making Buddha into a kind of God, which one seeks to please in order to win a favored position in this life or in the next. It is easy to get trapped by the idea that Buddha is something separate from yourself, and it is just as easy to get trapped by the idea that Buddha is something that is a part of ourself. To a beginning Zen student, Buddha appears as a treasure. But as soon as this happens, Buddha turns into an old thief who locks the student in the clothes closet full of fancy robes. After a Zen student has been trapped by the Buddha for a number of years, he's apt to find the paradise of murderers and thieves much safer than the underworld of Buddhas. But when the Zen student realizes thoroughly by direct experience that Buddha is a trap, then Buddha turns into a treasure. Excuse me. Dharma is generally understood to be the teaching of Buddha, or what is popularly called Buddhism. Suzuki Roshi warned his students that if they become the victims of Buddhism, he might be very happy, but they would not. A Zen master is constantly trying to point out to his students that the written teaching of Buddhism and Zen is not the true teaching. A Zen master will say things like, "Whatever you say, it is not true," or "It is true, but not always." He wants the student to understand that truth and reality cannot be limited by words and concepts. After a few years of Zen training, the student becomes fairly skillful in avoiding word and concept traps. At this time, however, Zen students are apt to fall into another trap. They are liable to make the mistake some of the practices of Zen Buddhism as permanently and universally. Let me read the sentence again. They are liable to mistake some of the practices of Zen Buddhism as permanently and universally valid. All Soto Zen masters put great emphasis upon the practice of Zazen. I remember listening to a lecture by a visiting Soto Zen teacher from Japan who pointed out that the biggest danger in the practice of Zen was the danger of giving up Zazen. I think he was right, but his answer was only partly true. Another danger is that after Zazen has been practiced for a number of years, it becomes habitualized and formalized. A good, healthy vacation from Zazen can do wonders for the reawakening of a deeper experiential knowledge of the practice. And if the Zen student is never moved back from his vacation, That's all right too. He may be able to realize himself more comfortably in a warmer or cooler climate. While one person may be liberated by Zazen, another may find that yoga, sensory awareness, Gestalt therapy, transcendental meditation, or some other teaching does the trick for him. Zen Buddhism will never be everyone's cup of tea. In its most limited sense, Sangha means the Buddhist priesthood or brotherhood, but generally Sangha is intended to include lay Buddhists as well as monks and priests. In the ordinary sense, a Sangha consists of a group of 3 or more Buddhists. It's easy to fall into the conceptual trap of believing that a Buddhist who practices alone or with just one other person and who is not officially connected with some kind of Buddhist organization is not part of a Buddhist Sangha. But strictly speaking, from the point of view of Zen, our person is not limited by our body. It includes all sentient beings. So, it is possible for one person who is aware of his true Buddha nature to practice alone in the mountains or in a city apartment and be just as actively participating in the Buddhist Sangha as someone who lives in a Buddhist commune. Dependency is one of the Sangha traps. When we belong to a Zen Buddhist group, it's easy to lean upon our spiritual family for encouragement and support. A group can become a safe haven, protecting the timid from encountering the larger environment of Zen. Suzuki Roshi often spoke about the necessity of purifying Zen. One difference between pure Zen Buddhism and impure Zen Buddhism is that the latter has become an exclusive cult. The members of a cult tend to separate themselves from other religions or beliefs. In time, isolation leads to inbreeding and weakening of the teaching. Each time Zen Buddhism enters a new country or a new culture or a new individual, it should strengthen itself by mingling freely in the spiritual marketplace of its new environment. If we think Buddhists are different from non-Buddhists, we make Buddhism into just another old hometown. According to Gautama Buddha, all human beings are manifestations of original nature. Some are awakened to their original nature and others are not. Those who are awakened are tentatively called Buddhists or Buddha, and those who are not yet awakened are tentatively called ordinary people or non-Buddhists. But strictly speaking, every human being is a Buddha or a potential Buddha, and not only human beings, but everything is Buddha nature. The Buddhist Sangha is not exclusively limited to the human race. It includes plants and animals and minerals, in short, everything conceivable and everything beyond human conception. There is a story about a Chinese Buddhist philosopher, Tao Cheng, whose enlightenment was so profound that his contemporaries could not understand it. He was expelled from the Buddhist Sangha for being a heretic. When Tao Cheng found human beings too hard-headed to bear the truth, he lectured to the rocks in the desert. Later, Buddhists say that when Tao Cheng told the rocks that they too had Buddha nature, the rocks nodded in agreement. Today, we need more Zen teachers who know how to talk to the rocks. But we need more Zen students willing to listen to rocks. Zen students should be encouraged to explore the outer limits of the Buddhist Sangha before settling down in their old hometown of human nature. Unfortunately, today, as well as in the past, students or teachers who have a talent for talking to rocks will most likely be considered crazy or heretical. But someday, someone will appreciate this kind of heresy.